The different types of mass media, such as radio, television, and the press, has always been an important part of our modern society, since the time it has revolutionized the way we communicate and disseminate information. Mass media as a tool for groundbreaking changes in the society. This which would not have been made possible. The scenario got radically changed with the emergence of computer and the internet. The emerging popular trend of products and services that take the help of ICT to entertain, educate, and communicate is collectively called the new media. Good day, wonderful viewer, and welcome to another interesting edition of your amazing program Vista, showing live on Union 406 TV. And today we'll be talking about the major topics in the media and how they relate and affect the industry. I am your host, Timileyin Adeyemo, and today we'll be looking at the idea of new media in journalism. Our focus today will be on various social media such as Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter, Instagram, and different blogs. We'll be talking about the impact of the adoption of new media in journalism, the various ethical challenges in the industry, and lots more. I won't be doing justice to this alone, as I have a wonderful guest in the studio who will be helping us shed more light on the discourse. He is a literary scholar, a poet, a media expert, a lecturer, a father, and of course the dean of the Faculty of Humanities and Culture, Osun State University, Ikire campus. Wonderful viewer, I present to you Professor Rotimi Faso. Good day, sir.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much, sir, for making it here with us. It is such a rare privilege, and definitely going to be an amazing moment on the studio today as we'll be unraveling and solving what seems to be a complicated puzzle. Just before we do that, we'll go on a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be going into the discussion proper. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and if you're just joining us, it is still your amazing program Vista, showing live on Union 406 TV, where we'll be talking about major topics in the media and how they relate and affect the industry. And we introduced our guest earlier in the person of Professor Rotimi Faso, and he will be helping us do justice to the discourse today. Now let's look at the major discussion in the program today. Sir, what can you say about the idea of new media in journalism?
Well, that's a very wide question, the idea of new media in journalism. I think there's a trend now, given the way the world has been going. We can see very well that new media has a major impact and major role to play in terms of how journalism is practiced in the contemporary world. So it's a major and important part of journalism going forward.
That was a brilliant answer. So nowadays, everyone is a journalist on social media. Everyone now has access to different number of news on social media platforms, sometimes sharing news even before journalists has ever picked it. We can now see different blogs doing the work of journalists. Individuals who are not even professionally trained will just pick up phones and upload any kind of information as news, as long as they are connected to the internet. Can we say that the social media is gradually making journalists go into extinction as bloggers and influencers take up their jobs from them?
Well, maybe for those who are not well versed in the practice of journalism, that might be the impression, but I do not see how social media could take over the roles of journalists. I think if anything at all, it reinforces more the need for trained practitioners in the field to practice journalism. Do not get me wrong, new media has revolutionized journalism practice, and it has come to stay. But like with everything, it's got its advantages and disadvantages too. For one, it has democratized the space for the practice of journalism, which makes it possible for just about everyone to, create their own content in terms of journalism. But the downside of it is the fact that everyone now sees themselves as practitioners, and they're in their own different spaces, and they try to create content. But it comes with the problem that many of them are not trained. They do not go through the protocols for presenting or creating content, and which is why you have all these uproar about fake news and whatnot. Because these, what I would call armchair practitioners of journalism, they simply stay back, and because they have access to social media and the devices that make it possible for them to practice, they simply go out there and disseminate information. But basically, it simply goes back. It tells us the relevance of trained journalists in the field. We can't discount with them.
Thank you so much, sir. Moving on. Can you say social media has had impact on journalism? And to you, what are the various impacts?
Yeah, I think I alluded to that earlier on, that it's had both positive and negative impacts on journalism practice. For one, it's no longer the case that practitioners of journalism can just sit back somewhere and expect the news to come to them. The traditional mode of practicing journalism has changed, and if you are going to remain in the trade, you have to move with the times, which then means that you have to, join the practitioners of new media, in the sense that it's now the case that you have new devices that enables the practice of journalism 24/7. So the traditional practitioners of journalism will have to step up their game and ensure that they are joining in the practice, they are not left behind. And in doing this, they have competitors, many of whom are not trained. And because they are not trained, but they are able to break news at the moment, just as it is happening, they are able to break the news. So it means then that the trained practitioners will have to also see to it that they are keeping pace with the trend of things, just how things are happening. So they have to keep on working round the clock. And I think in most places, those who want to call themselves journalists, who are trained, they've taken the necessary steps to ensure that they keep in trade, because you see that all of them, they've gone online as well. At least, if we're talking of new journalism these days, we are talking in terms of how people have been able to, the affordances of the social media, the World Wide Web and everything. So if you are a journalist, you have to ensure that you are able to keep pace with what is going on there. And that's why major news outlets, they have their online side to whatever it is that they are doing. Take, for example, newspapers. They are able to ensure that they are updating their information as time goes on. Even when the paper print is out there, for the day, but you see that when you go online, you see that they are giving you the news on the go. Like in This Day, for example, you have This Day Live. Some of them even have their television component. So they are ensuring that they keep pace with whatever is going on in the field. They are not left behind at all. I thought that question has two sides, or what? I think we're talking about both the negative and the positive impact.
Yes.
Now, the negative side of it, the positive side then is that it has helped the practitioners to up their game, to ensure that they keep in line. They are practicing journalism and they are going with the trend of the practice. But on the other hand, they have these untrained practitioners who just populate the field, making it very difficult for people to distinguish between what is what you might call fake news and what is authentic news. So the thing is that it's made the field very difficult for trained practitioners and for even the consumers of news items, for them to distinguish between what is real and what is fake news. Thank
That
you.
was an amazing response, sir. So just before we go on a short break, amazingly, we cannot neglect the impact of the adoption of social media in news spreading. But there are some ethical challenges surrounding it, just as we said earlier, such as news manipulation, faking news, and lots more. And they, of course, diminish journalist credibility. How can these issues be curbed or controlled?
Well, I think that imposes some kind of responsibility on producers of news content and even the consumers themselves. I think even maybe more on the side of the consumers. They must be discerning news consumers. They must be people who are savvy in terms of how they, the type of news they expose themselves to. It can't be, I think to some extent, everyone should try as much as possible to train themselves in the art of distinguishing between what might be fake news and what is authentic news, authentic information. So it poses responsibility on them to find out the source of their information. And still out there, people are able to distinguish news sources. You just don't see a message coming to your WhatsApp platform, for example, and you start circulating it. It's your own responsibility to ensure that you get the right kind of information. And people still know sources of authentic information aside, away from the fake news. So if you are in Nigeria, for example, you know the sources that you have to contact. If you've got a piece of information, you just don't go out there and disseminate it. You want to know the source. It imposes that responsibility on you. If you do not do that, then of course you are only, part of the problem.
So thank you, sir. Viewer at home, I hope you've been enjoying this discussion so far just as I am. We'll go on a quick break, and when we come back, we'll bring to you the concluding part of the discussion. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and if you're just joining us, this is still your interesting program, Vista, showing live on Union 406 TV, where we'll be talking about various topics in the media and how they relate and affect the industry. And of course, we still have our amazing guest in the studio, in the person of Professor Rotimi Pastor, and he's been outstanding so far with shedding more light on the discourse, social media and journalism. So we all know we are in a digital age, and the rise of social media has opened way for so many things, and at the same time closed the door for so many things, that if you don't want to move with technology, you'll be left still in your field. Has the adoption of social media made journalism easier, or has it made it harder?
Well, I think the answer to that is implied in my earlier answer, because to some extent it's made journalism very easy. It's now very easy for people to produce their own content with the right kind of devices. You can do a lot on your own. It's kind of reduce the cost that is required for you to practice journalism. So that is a very positive aspect of what it's done. But on the other side, we've explained earlier on how negative it could be. The fact that everyone now has access to the means, the devices for producing content. And it's so bad that even with the smallest item, you have your Android phone or whatever it is, you are able to create content, and which could be destabilizing for the environment if some of these instruments get into the hand of an untrained person. So there you have it.
Thank you very much, sir. So, as we all know that everyone serves as a journalist on social media today, what is the hope of the journalism profession?
Well, there is a lot. There is a lot of hope there, because you just can't compare someone who is trained in a particular profession with someone who is not trained. I wouldn't want us to appear to be repeating ourselves over and again. But the point is that a trained practitioner is always different from one who is not trained. And no matter how you want to, we shouldn't start seeing the explosion in the use of social media as spelling the death of journalism. This type of uproar has been in place before now. In decades before now, we've had, there has been this revolution going on. It's been evolving over the decades. Before now, people worried when television came on the scene. Before that, it was radio, the diffusion set, and whatever it was. So when television came, people believed that the radio would be out. It's completely useless. But that never happened. Radio still found its own niche, and in fact, it still exploded to other parts of the world where literacy to a certain level was not that developed. So the radio still had its own relevance. And now that we're talking of and television came and stayed, and then of course we had newsprint, the news media. People even thought that the advent of television would simply sideline newsprint and what have you, but it hasn't done that. So the same thing will apply now. After the usual euphoria that people engage in whenever you see something new, people will settle down and come to get calmer and be able to separate what we might call the boys from the men, or the girls from the women. You eventually get to that point whereby you know that if you want the right type of expertise, you know where to go to. Influencers, bloggers of any kind won't just take over the place of trained practitioners. They will be there. The idea of citizens journalism is there now, and everyone can practice. It's got its own advantages to the extent that it does not allow dictatorship to thrive. But on the other hand, you still need the trained practitioners, and the trained practitioners will always be needed, because each time you want things done properly, you have to go to those who are trained to do it. So journalists will always be relevant.
Thank you very much, sir. That was an interesting one. Just before we let you leave, sir, what advice you have for journalists in the new media age?
Well, what advice can we give? Give to journalists. We are all journalists in our own world to some extent, and which is why everyone thinks that they are. Because they have the means of creating, and and then of course, journalism is kind of taking. To some people, it's a kind of performance, right? People see it as a kind of performance whereby they simply go out and display their talents, maybe in fashion or what have you, and which is why some people equate influencers and bloggers with trained journalists. But that is not the case. What is required is that if you want to practice journalism in the new age, you come to it with a sense of purpose, intentionally. You know that this is what you want to do, and you are ready to pay what it takes to do it and do it professionally. So journalists should move with the trend. They should move with the times if they want to be relevant. There is still, the space is wide for everyone to practice. Everyone will find their own niche. Both the trained practitioners and those who are bloggers, who are influencers, they all have their roles to play. So we should thank, we should be grateful that technology has been evolving in such a way that there are more people practicing these days. But if you want to be a relevant, practitioner, you must ensure that you have what it takes. If your role is to be a blogger, is to be an influencer, you do not have the necessary training. You may need also, if you want to retain informed audiences, you may need to get what it takes for you to do it professionally. At least something that is close to being professional practice. Otherwise, you'll be sidelined. But essentially, journalists should move with the trend of things and try to develop themselves.
Thank you so much, sir, for being part of the program.
Okay.
Thank you for taking time to be here with us. Really appreciate it, and we do not take it for granted. To our wonderful viewers at home, thank you for being part of the program. This is where we wrap it up and draw the curtain on the program today. A big thanks to the crew in the studio, and special regards to our executive producers, Mr. B.O. Adefemi and Dr. Mary Okocha. So we'll be joining you next week, same time, same station. Don't stop watching Union 406, and I remain your host, Timileyin Adeyemo. Bye.